Hey guys, welcome to another Motion University live stream. We're super excited to have you with us. And I'm streaming solo here today. John Clay's on the road. So if you have any issues with the stream, it's my fault, not his fault this time. But with that said, I will be watching your comments and I'm going to be watching kind of the technical stuff. So let me know in the comments if you are unable to hear us for some reason or if something is not working correctly. I won't be able to watch it quite as consistently as I maybe would when John Clay is running the conversation. But I'm super excited about this subject. So we're already, goodness, like basically like 2 weeks into 2021, if I can say that, which has already been quite an interesting year. And a lot of people are saying, oh, 2021 is going to be the year, and those kind of things. And I think it definitely is, and every year can be. And I honestly don't subscribe to to looking down on 2020. I think every challenge God gives us can make us stronger. And so I'm excited today to be talking with a good friend, Nato. He has, I've gotten to know him over the years on a lot of different levels, but he's been doing a lot of coaching for folks on kind of helping us learn. I know I personally struggle with, oftentimes you can come up with these big ideas and these goals, but then, come 2 weeks into the year, you've not done anything on them. So I wanted to kind of bring him on today and talk a little bit about goal setting and how we can start to actually accomplish goals too, and not just set, audacious goals, but actually do them. So just checking the stream really quick. Looks like things are coming through just fine. So welcome everybody. Today, like I said, we're talking with Nato Jacobson. And so, Nato, why don't you give us a little introduction to who you are and why you're passionate about this subject?
Sure. Well, thanks for bringing me on, man. I've so appreciated you and the team at Motion U and just the the great experiences that we've had together, and have a lot of respect for your work and I just excited to be here. My background is one of obviously a lot of the same stuff that you've been involved with, filmmaking and and stuff in the arts. I've done a lot of work in the audio drama space as well, and so it's been a fun ride. But I've sort of had this other life almost in the midst of that, where I got involved in a company in a totally different, it was a mastermind community, just a totally different space, and a good friend of both my life and yours, Alex Lerma, was the guy who brought me into that, and he even before we were on that team together, he was. We were doing some regular calls together, and he was really encouraging me in certain aspects of personal growth and development. And he was like, Nato, there are 3 books that I think you should read, and I will buy them for you and ship them to you if you promise me that you will read them. And what you have to understand about me is that I was not a reader growing up, and so I was like, okay, I'll do it if it's from you. And so anyway, I read those 3 books, and it turned me into a reader. It turned me into someone who was very passionate about personal growth and really sort of taking something that had been a struggle for me, which was the idea of potential, as something that had kind of gotten me locked up a bit in there's where I am now and there's who I could be. I don't know how to get from A to B, and it would just sort of be defeating for me, and I just really ended up growing up several years ago in that way, really kind of becoming an adult in some way. To quote Jim Rohn, the day you graduate from childhood to adulthood is the day you take full responsibility for your life. And that's kind of the shift that happened for me. And so anything related to growth and to goals and such, like we're talking about today, is definitely my cup of tea.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, okay, so obviously you mentioned these books. Now that is definitely piqued my interest. I'm really curious what those 3 books that Alex sent you were.
Yeah, yeah. So he sent me a book called Ordering Your Private World by Gordon MacDonald,
Okay.
which is a more of a from a Christian perspective of the kind of things that we're talking about. And then he sent me Entre Leadership by Dave Ramsey,
Okay, yep.
which was really great. And then Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy, which is a little bit more of a practical, like, habit forming book. And then shortly thereafter, I have to also mention another book that I highly recommend. Alex and I did a book study through a book called Home Run.
Okay.
By Kevin Myers.
Okay.
And it's co-authored by John Maxwell. And that book was basically used a baseball illustration of running the bases in terms of order of priorities for the Christian, from a Christian perspective. That was it totally revolutionized my way of thinking, and the way that I prioritized my life, and then it also was part of what got me into John Maxwell, which is I'm kind of a Maxwell student, over the last number of years, and that's been really huge for me as well.
That's awesome. Yeah. So for anybody just joining us, again, we're talking here with Nato Jacobson. We're kind of talking about the subject of goal setting and planning, and not just setting goals, but actually accomplishing them is something that we want to talk about today. So if you have any comments or feedback or anything that you want to talk about, go ahead and drop those in the comments. I would love to answer those live with you guys. This is going to be a little bit more of a discussion in some ways. So hopefully some back and forth with you guys in the comments. I have those up over here so I can answer those. We also got some that were submitted ahead of time on Instagram, so we're going to definitely hit those as well. But yeah, so Nato, I kind of want to jump in talking about, so it's New Year's ish. I mean, we're a couple weeks in now at this point, but what would you say for a lot of us? I think the tension is that we have big dreams and goals that we want to accomplish in life, or specifically in 2021. But it's so easy to set these, BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals, but then not actually accomplish them, or not. It's easy. Like, so we with part of Motion University is we have our Motion Pro group, which we meet, once a week for a couple of hours, every Thursday night, actually. So tonight we'll be meeting again, but where we're trying to help people establish goals and stick to them. But something I was realizing recently was that it's easy for me, as a bit more of the visionary side, or right brain instead of left brain, emphasis at least, to set a goal, but in the back of my head, I almost don't expect myself to even be able to accomplish it. I think if I was really truly honest with myself, I don't know that I actually even think I can accomplish it. So how can we maybe talk a little bit about, I don't know if it's a mindset shift. How do we not repeat failures of the past if we've set goals, whether it's a new habit you want to start, or, these kind of things, but how do you break that down? How do you actually, and this is a very open-ended kind of big question. Sure. I realize that, but I think this is probably where a lot of us are coming from. It's like, I want this. When I set goals, I have a hard time actually getting them done. What is some advice, or maybe kind of just to kick off this conversation along that line, and people on the chat, feel free to jump into. So, but anyway, yeah, thoughts.
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, part of it is a confidence issue, is what you're really talking about, right? Is you have to, confidence is something that I kind of wish I could just decide to be confident, and then suddenly I would be able to just barrel through any obstacle and make stuff happen.
Right.
But confidence really has to be developed by virtue of experiencing, something proven, experiencing success after success, and really establishing a basis of evidence that, yes, I know how to do this. Yes, I've done this right. I've done this well. And, and so it's a little bit of a catch-22, because it's like, well, you have to have enough confidence or enough courage to take a step forward on something, to make a move, to take action.
Right.
But you also need confidence already established beforehand, to really be able to do anything that's significantly beyond you, or beyond your experience thus far. So so that's why what's really critical to that process is starting small enough, setting the bar low enough to be able to just do it, just make something happen, even if it feels like, that was embarrassing easy or simple, and I'm better than that. I can do more than that, and you kind of we sort of sabotage ourselves before we give ourselves a chance, because we, at least I know this is true for me, I think I should be able to do more now. Why?
Yeah.
I'm a bum. I'm lazy. Come on, this shouldn't be a as much of a process, but Ian McGregor talks about this in working with the same principle as training horses, in that you start with the low fences. You have
sure.
you have to work your way up to something, and if you're out of practice or out of fitness, in a sense, if you're out of shape when it comes to making a certain type of thing happen, even like even if it is literally working out, for instance, if you just haven't been in the habit of exercising every day, the worst thing that you can do other than do nothing is go do a multi-hour ridiculously intense workout. You'll be bedridden for a week. It's just a terrible idea. So you just 5 minutes, just take 5 minutes to start out your day getting some exercise, and let that be the bar. Let that be the standard for the moment. And consistency has to precede intensity if you're going to have a sustainability. Like if you're going to actually get where you become that person, rather than just do something for some number of days, but if you're going to become the person that you're wanting to become in pursuing something, then consistency has to be that prerequisite. And so use a scorecard. When we're talking about habit goals, it is important to distinguish between habit goals and achievement goals.
Sure.
But if we're talking about habits for the moment, then use a scorecard to track your, so I'm doing this right now, with a few 5-minute habits, and I'm tracking my success each day in just knocking out those 5-minute habits. And I'm so out of practice with these that I'm choosing to set the bar that low, to just establish consistency, to just get a rhythm.
Yeah.
And I actually have that on a spreadsheet that's color coded, so that it's red, yellow, or green according to my success or lack thereof. So you want to set your success rate at 80%. If you can get it, make it happen 80% of the time or more, you've got it. Don't set it for 100%. You're never gonna, that's never gonna work. It'll backfire. So if you do that with your habit patterns, then you'll be able to build up confidence over the repetitions, right? To where it's like, okay, I got this. I got this. and now you can just send it up another notch once you get that provenness that allows you to keep moving forward now with a greater level of confidence than you had before. It has to be that ramping process, because otherwise you'll swing too far one way or the other, and you'll either depend too much on confidence on the front end, or you'll just settle for mediocrity, and you don't want either of those. You want to just obviously make it gradual.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So for anybody just joining, we're kind of talking about how do you have that mindset, or how do you take something. I think a lot of us are guilty of setting goals but not keeping with them. And I think what you bring out is a great point, is that oftentimes it's because we take one big, huge goal and say, I want that, and then put that down on a list, kaplunk. It's like, and then, you have no momentum build up, I think is kind of what you're talking about, where it's like taking it, taking something, even if it feels, a crime, that it's such a small thing that you want to accomplish so much, but allowing yourself the ability to break it down into something very, very small, that you can start to build momentum on it and then kind of build. So maybe let's for a second, I think this applies obviously to both, whether, like you said, it's a habit goal or a achievement goal. So let's just dwell for a minute on the habit goals, and then we'll talk about the other. So somebody has the goal to start a new habit, whether it's journaling consistently or working out consistently, or something like that. Do you have a process that you could break down a little bit for people, in terms of, like, for somebody kind of new to this, do you just say, like, put a reminder on your phone? Like, do you have any kind of practical, tangible, like, for when it's that everyday consistency, or maybe it's once a week, or is there a frequency that helps your brain latch onto it too? I'm kind of throwing a bunch of questions out there at once, but yeah.
No, it's good. That's good. Yeah. I think so. I have a little bit of a personal bias toward the scorecard idea, because I really like sort of having that, spreadsheet numbers type of instant feedback that tells me what my success looks like in a more tangible form, because that just puts more clothes on it for me. So some people prefer to use X's on the calendar, and just a daily mark, that indicates whether they did something or not. I think one thing I want to make sure gets mentioned here in terms of setting habit goals is it's very easy to think inside the box of what you want to start doing. And we rarely give thought to what we need to stop doing.
Ooh,
and so the Jim Collins talks about this in Good to Great on an organizational level of how the stop doing list is just as important, if not more so, than the start doing list. So part of what I think you'll find, that if you really analyze your life, take a step back and look at it, you'll probably find that part of what is making it really difficult for you to get into the new thing that you're trying to start is that there's something about the way your lifestyle is, or some kind of habit pattern you already have established, that's sabotaging your ability to do that. So I would encourage people to really take a hard look at what are the things that are holding me back right now, and what are some really simple, again, low bar things that I could begin with in establishing a daily elimination of this, right? And I would say, whether you're setting your start doing list or your stop doing, never set more than 3 at a time, or you'll kill yourself. and just get discouraged. And then, track it. It's like Maxwell says, you'll never change your life until you change something you do daily. So if we sort of start there, then, you can do it that way. Something another thing that comes to mind that I really haven't practiced yet, and I want to personally experiment with this.
Yeah,
is a guy I used to work with, Blaine Elkers. He has a company called Selfluence that deals with a lot of this kind of stuff. He talks about the something called habit linking, where you take an existing habit like brushing your teeth, for instance, and you attach a habit that you want to introduce that you don't already have established. So that's something that I can't really speak from experience on. I want to try that myself, but just throwing that out there to people in case there's something that they just automatically do. They make their bed or go for a walk or their drive to it's like this is a common one you hear a lot, right? If they have a drive into work or every day or something like that, then it was like, or they have a lunch break or whatever. It's like, hey, I wanted to get into listening to audiobooks, or a podcast or something. So I ended up introducing that during my drive time or during my lunch time or even during my workout or something like that, right? So you can do habit linking in that way, which I guess I technically have done that before. I just haven't thought about it. So
sure.
Because I just remembered that. But anyway, that can be something that's helpful too. I guess I feel like I'm answering questions that are peripheral to the actual question that you asked. I don't know if you feel like I've quite hit it yet.
No,
what do you think?
No, that's all fantastic stuff, because I think something else that maybe you kind of hit on in that, and I just wrote a note on too, is actually having a routine that you follow.
Yeah,
because you're mentioning like it's so much easier to insert. I think it's having a routine maybe would be like having a more well cultivated field to start growing new habits in. Because if you're already just like doing everything as it kind of hits you, rather than being as proactive to have habits, having some kind of routine maybe is another takeaway where, and that's something that I struggle with, because I'm not very good at maintaining a routine, especially when you have travel and projects and those kind of things. It's just like, so I don't know if there's, so maybe the habit linking is something that maybe that's helpful for those who maybe don't have some. I feel like some jobs are more prone to having a routine than others too. I know for us in the film industry, it's a little bit more, all over the place. So this is kind of pivoting slightly, but I think this might be an interesting conversation, would be how can we, for those of us who are really busy a lot of the time, or have that kind of uneven schedule of working, whether it's on set or post, where it's like that feast and famine, and like when you don't necessarily have that structured life to begin with, how do you bring some structure, or because I think at the end of the day, that's oftentimes I keep habits way easier when I'm not on set, or when I'm it's like, okay, well, I have a consistent schedule. I wake up at this time, I do this, and I always know I'm going to do this. But then as soon as I get on set or we're traveling or something like that, it just all goes out the window. So how do we not like get to those moments of just like, okay, everything out the window because now I'm on a film set, but like, how do you maintain those goals in and amongst life as it happens?
Well,
maybe you don't.
I'm gonna have to level with you here and tell you that I have not figured all that out yet. I'm definitely one who struggles a lot with that type of that's the sort of routine structure, to things. When it comes to set life and doing lots of traveling, which I'm very familiar with, there is some degree, I think we kind of have to own this. There's some degree to which, if we are choosing that type of life, we have to we have to use a little bit of a different infrastructure for that, because the reality is that if you try to keep up with all the other things when you go to set, or if you go on some, you know, trip that's not just totally recreational, you know, vacation or whatever,
right,
like, you're going to burn out instantly. There's no way you can sustain that unless, you know, I mean, if you have any significant things that you're trying to do sort of in home life or whatever, you're not going to carry that with you completely. You're going to have to push the pause button on some of it, or simplify it to a large degree. So there's I don't want to be sort of, you know, have a limiting belief here. I think we need to be real about the nature of that lifestyle, and so the infrastructure that you have in place at that point is less, in some cases, it depends on what we're talking about, but it's less about making sure that thing gets done in this exact way, and more about, am I staying on the trajectory that I set myself on before I arrived on this set, or before I went on this trip. And so it has to be a little bit, you have to kind of tweak it to work for you. It has to be adaptable to different environments, is what I'm saying. So you know, I mean, there are some things, for example, say you have a habit that you want to, let's say, eat, you know, 2 or 3 servings of fruits and vegetables every day, and that's something that or maybe an easier, that might be pretty hard to keep up on on a film set or something, but at least, like,
I mean, gummies, those are vegetables, right? No, wait, hold on.
Right, yeah. If you're trying to reduce your sugar intake or something, I don't know, you know, what you know, you're trying to lose weight or something. If you're trying to, like, work towards losing weight, let's say, well, a film set could be a great place for that. You know, so like, you might be able to continue on whatever it was you were already doing in that exact format, and it's fine. But if you were trying to, like, you know, like, read 10 pages of a book every day, or get a significant workout in every day, or something like that, the idea that you're going to be able to sustain that level of a habit of that nature in that type of environment, or when you're, you know, when you've sort of thrown your life into a tizzy in a way, and like, you can't really do it that way, right? It's just not going to work.
No, I think
so.
Well, I'm just to summarize really quick. I think a really good point that you're bringing out is that I think it's the tendency is, when you get in a challenging situation where it's like, okay, normal life is out the window, then you throw everything out about normal life, including the goals that you set. At least I know from my experience. Right. So I think maybe, and I think, and Courtney was bringing this out in the chat. She left a comment about just like, knowing your routine is key, but then scaling that back when you're on set. So I think that's kind of a key point where it's like, okay, don't expect. I think people can either go one of two ways. It's like, I'm going to still do it even if I'm on set, even if it kills me, or whatever they might be doing, or I'm going to throw everything out because obviously I don't. There's no way I can actually accomplish that. Right. So instead, I think it's almost this mindset of, how committed are you to this goal? Is this really something you want to do? Number one, then yes, you should still do it when you're on set, but scale it down, figure out how, maybe it's an intentionality beforehand of how am I going to maintain this in some way, even if it doesn't look the same as my normal life. But it's not just everything's out the window, but it's like, okay, somehow I'm going to have a scaled version of this. So if it's, working on something, or I know Bethany Cooper left a comment in the chat as well. So, hey, Bethany, good to see you. She was mentioning about, she was asking for me. So all of 2020, I did an everyday challenge, which was to make a poster every single day, or at least have a poster made for every single day of the year. Which when you get on set is very challenging, because it's like, oh shoot, like you wrap at 3 a.m. or whatever by the time everything's done in meetings and everything, and you still got to make a poster, and then you still got to get up at like 6 a.m. or whatever it is the next day.
Oh man.
So it was sort of the same thing where I had to do it every single day. That was the challenge. But I could so part of what helped me get through it was to, I could either make one ahead. So some people do a challenge where it's like, I will make one every single day. And I knew that wouldn't always be possible, just given, how life goes sometimes. So I could either make some ahead, or I could make a very scaled down, very simplified, like it's literally a letter on a document. Yeah, and it's like, it's a poster. It pains me to publish this, but it was a poster. And so I did technically do it. So that's kind of how I got around some of that, where it's like, so I think both what you were saying and what Courtney was saying in the chat, and it's kind of this, if you have a mindset that you're not throwing it out, but you're going to do it, scale it down to something that's manageable, but still be mindful of that even in the busyness, I guess, if that makes sense. Right.
Yeah, it's good. That's really good.
Cool. Awesome. So, okay. So we talked about the habit thing. I want to also jump back before we get too far carried away onto if you have a big goal that you want to accomplish. So, and actually, sorry, there's several thoughts swimming around my head that all correlate.
Yeah.
But so back to, we kind of talked about, okay, habit forming, creating something, doing something every single day. So if somebody has say a goal for 2021 where it's, they want to do X or Y, or it's kind of like a one thing, do you have some kind of process that you recommend for people of like, because it's easy to just look at that and be like, oh my goodness, how am I ever going to accomplish that? So I'll just put it as like the end of the year, sometime by the end of the year, and we'll just kind of do stuff. And then you get to the end of the year, it's like, well, that didn't happen. I think that can happen a lot. So how can we take that big goal, break it down into something doable over the course of 2021?
Yeah, you bet. So first of all, especially because of where you and I are coming from, and I think probably a lot of the people who are listening in, we're probably talking about people whose lives are very dynamic. That there's a lot of change that happens in a short amount of time, and the landscape can shift very regularly. At least for me, man, I feel like every week or two, it's like, oh wow, okay, well, this looks a little bit different than it used to. So I think that we have to account for, that like if the life that we choose is going to be that dynamic, then setting annual goals is something we have to be really, really careful about, because here's what happens. If you set a long-term goal, or multiple long-term goals, and it just kind of falls by the wayside because other things, things changed, you had to adjust, and it's like, okay, well, this other thing's more important now, or whatever, and you're continually adapting like that, right? Well, what that does is it trains your mind to look at any goal like that you set and be like, that doesn't mean anything. We know that's not going to happen, right? And so now it just sort of becomes this exercise in futility, to ever do it in the first place, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what I would recommend is that if you're actually going to set a goal for longer than 90 days, it
Mm.
is, if it's more than a 90-day pursuit for you, then I would be extremely selective about what that would be. In that you have to, it has to be something that you're taking very, very seriously, to have enough justification for committing for that long of a period of time,
Yeah.
to endeavor in a particular direction like that. So so I would say, it's like, an example for me several years ago was I just, I when it came to reading the word, the scriptures,
Mm-hmm.
I was really just not, I hadn't been in a, I did it somewhat habitually, but like it just wasn't much of a commitment for me, in a really high priority sense.
Mm.
And so it just sort of, happened as it did. And I wasn't really all that interested, in what I could glean from that time. And so I ended up making a commitment for a particular year that I was just going to dedicate myself to that, to pursuing the word in a way that was just unprecedented for my life. And it was transformational. It was,
Mm-hmm.
it really changed me, in a really cool way. But that was an exceptional situation where
Yeah.
there was something that I knew needed to, really for the first time, become number one in my life. And I was, and there was a clear justification for setting myself on that course for that long.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, I think we want to set our specific targets where we're actually saying not just, more generalities or more
Mm-hmm.
intangibles, but when we're saying this tangible thing, that I'm gonna hit this specific target, I'm gonna do this by such and such a time. I would highly recommend that your general rule of thumb be no longer than a 90-day pursuit
Mm.
in that particular direction. And then what you
Yeah.
can do is that when you cross into the next quarter of the year, you take a step back, you look at your life and your goals and so forth, and you reevaluate, and you take a hard look at it, and you say, okay, and you can always decide to just keep going on the same, the same pursuit
Right.
for another 90 days, but what that does is it sort of, you hit a little bit of a, I don't want to say reset button, but you know
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You're giving yourself a chance to renew your understanding of why you set out to do something, and you can really just, be able to get that, uh, landscape shift taken into account. Okay,
Yeah.
what's different now? That, how do I adapt in a good way? Like there's research that's been done, of the ability for a team or an individual to kind of stick with something, and 90 days kind of being this cap that you need to put on that.
Yeah.
For it's interesting to think about that. Like 90 days is 3 months, and 3 months is the length of a season in the natural realm.
Yeah.
So if you think of life more seasonally,
Mm-hmm.
I think that helps a lot in drilling down to the goals that you set for yourself. So think of life in seasons, and okay, for this season, what makes sense for this? And sometimes,
Yeah.
you might have to say, look, this is just going to be for a month or for a week, and just set yourself on that course and make it happen. Don't obligate yourself to commit to a period of time that goes so into the unknown that, like you want vision for that. You want vision for the long term. Don't set targets for the long term unless you really, really know what you're doing.
Yeah. No, that's such a really good point. And I think so. Okay, so I was taking some notes on this, and I'm going to see if I can kind of make some kind of like summarization here for people maybe who are just joining in or are just maybe not tracking along quite perfectly. And to anybody who's just joining in, again, we're talking with Nato Jacobson, and we're kind of talking about goal setting and how do we not just pick at random, but actually like accomplish things that we set out to do. And if you have any comments or thoughts along this line, definitely feel free to drop those in the chat as well. But yeah, so to summarize a little bit, I guess kind of what I'm thinking is almost so when you talk about vision, having the vision aspect being for you should have the vision for the future. So let me see if I can break this down. So you have in the whole conversation of maybe not setting a goal that's more than a year. The reason being there's just no way, especially in the lifestyle that we have. I mean, literally, filmmakers are the most last minute people on the planet, I think, pretty much. So have the vision element for the year or for multiple years is this the lifestyle that you want to accomplish the goals that you're setting off after? It's kind of that big picture of like, what direction do you see your life wanting to go? And that will help you know what projects to pick, these kinds of things. It's kind of a filter maybe to then that filters down into, so then the next step is if you have a specific goal that you want to accomplish, picking a date, like a length of time that you can know a little bit more concretely. This is kind of why I say I find that like even like doing like a 12-hour film competition is easier than a 48, is because your brain can comprehend how much time you have in a 12-hour period. And it's easier to pace yourself over 12 hours than it is over 48. Things like that, where it's like, so if you pick a 90-day goal or 60-day goal or a week goal, so you have your vision to then filter what you're doing so that ultimately this is the direction I want to go. So then you pick a goal that's in that direction, pick it in a time frame that's, comprehensible. That's like, I know a lot of us, I think, can know a pretty good picture, at least 60 to 90 days out of like kind of how things are going to look until COVID hits or whatever. But,
right.
So like still be flexible within that. But, and then the next step from that is to pick a measurable goal. I think is another thing that a lot of us fall into the trap of like, I want to accomplish this, but how do you actually quantify what does this mean? Like, what is that going to look like? What's the actual measurements? I think you touched on that briefly. And then also pick something that's manageable in that time period that you take. So you're not just picking some random goal of like, I want to accomplish this and then putting a random timeline to it. It's in 90 days. Maybe that's a smaller piece of a larger goal. That maybe your vision is established. This is what I want to do, but here's the piece that I can do in 60 or 90 days, whatever it might be. And then making sure that it's that actually, when you sit down and think about it, you can think through the steps that it would take to actually get there, or what steps to take in the long run. So it's kind of bringing it down to that tangible, actual reality element of it. So I don't know if that's like a good summarization. If you have anything else to add to kind of that.
I stayed pretty big picture there. I appreciate you bringing it down to earth. So I really like Michael Hyatt's smarter framework. So you've probably heard of SMART goals, right? Which is, he adds a couple of things to that, and he calls it the smarter goal. And so I'll just throw that out real quick. So it starts with specific. Making sure that you're really clear about what it actually, there's a specificity to it. It's measurable, it's actionable, and in that you can it's within your control. You can actually just jump on it. Another one though is risky. So, and I think that can be a little bit confusing for people sometimes, in that they think that has to mean dangerous. Not necessarily. It could, but what it really means is that it's outside of your comfort zone. This is absolutely critical for setting goals, and that differentiates it from projects, right? Goals and projects are not the same thing. So a goal needs to stretch you. It needs to be beyond your comfort zone. And then time keyed, obviously, like you were talking about, having a specific time frame that you're looking to accomplish yourself in, so that you can pace yourself. And then another one, the E in smarter, is exciting. So I remember one of Michael Hyatt's team members talking about this at their Focus Leader Intensive, and talking about how I should doesn't last very long.
It doesn't.
So it's got to kind of light a bit of a fire within you if it's going to last.
Totally makes sense.
And then the last letter of the smarter framework is relevant. So it really kind of comes back to that seasonal thing of for right now, is this the most relevant thing, right? And because there are so many different things that we could all do, right?
Right.
I don't know about you, but for me, like, I would love to do a million things right now, and I have to, like you said, filter, right? I have to curate my desires down to what am I actually going to prioritize, right? So much of life is about prioritization, and it really has nothing to do with time management, because you can't manage time. Time just goes. So you have to manage your priorities. What am I going to do with the time that I have? And so you have to make it, you have to apply to the present and say, okay, what for right now is relevant? Someday, maybe, this other thing will happen, but what's relevant for now? And then if it is going to be something that's beyond just, this week or the coming weeks or this month, and you're looking at 90 days or more than 90 days, up to a year maybe, then like you were talking about, very important to break that down in a way that you can pace yourself. And so what you can do, if this is helpful for you, is you can take something of that size and put it on a week-to-week basis. And so for as long as you can foresee, say the next 4 weeks, for instance, okay, this is what I need to do this week, next week, the third week, the fourth week, to pace myself to get to where I want to go by the end of the year or by the end of the quarter. And so then you're tracking your progress according to a particular week, rather than a whole quarter or a year. Trying to figure out where you are in your progress on that big of a time frame is just like impossible. So you have to break it down enough to where your success rate, in a sense, can be tracked in the present week or day even that you're living in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. I think that's a really good point, because it's easy to be like, it's like, okay, ready, get, set, go. But then you're like, I'm running, but I don't know where I am. Like, that's not very helpful. Yeah. So like you said, not just picking a clear end goal, but also helping yourself know where you are on that journey being an important aspect.
Yeah, that's such a great analogy. I love that. The whole running a marathon. It's like, can you just imagine jumping into a 26.2 mile run without a stopwatch or mile markers?
Right.
I mean, that would be so awful.
Because like you said, you want to pace yourself to where it's like, because I mean, I've never run a marathon, to those who have, this is probably but I should not be the one talking about this, but in the sense of, it's like, I just know from like even pacing yourself, if like, okay, we're going to work a 16-hour day today, you just pace yourself and your energy. You don't burn it all in the first like 3 hours. If you think this is like, oh, this is a 3-hour project, it's a 3-hour day, we're just going to go, and you like burn all your energy. And then if the day extends and it extends and extends, then you're just like exhausted, versus if you knew it was going to be a 16-hour day, So just having that kind of ability to kind of check yourself along. It's not, I think it's easy to start to look at time management, as it's called, or goal setting and these kind of things as almost a taskmaster, but that's not really what it is. In so many ways, it's a tool for you to be able to accomplish what you want to do at the end of the day. It's not, and I think another thing you touched on was really important, of like having the motivation for it, I think is actually really key. So if it's something you want to accomplish, like that was for me in doing my everyday challenge in 2020, it was like, I knew if I picked something I didn't want to do, I would never be able to keep it up for an entire year every single day. But I picked something I love, and I said I'm going to do that every single day. Which
Yeah,
obviously
good.
it needs to be constructive, right? It's like I'm going to play video games every
Yes.
single day of the year. It's like, well, I mean, that might be an interesting goal to set, but maybe not the most constructive. So if you can find that bridge where it's like, okay, it's something, you know, constructive and it lights a fire under you, I think that's really cool. So yeah, fantastic
Yes.
stuff.
100%.
So we're coming in on about 10 minutes left here, and so I want to also, there was a couple of questions that were submitted on Instagram yesterday.
Yeah.
And if you guys in the chat, if you have any other questions you want to throw out there, but and this kind of dovetails in. But the question was, how do you decide what to do each day? What's first, and how do you prioritize? So I think this is a great question because it's so easy to just be bombarded with just stuff constantly. So what's maybe a metric people can use to kind of, because like we talked about prioritization and these kind of things, but
Yeah.
how do you do that when it seems like, especially in this day and age, you just get inundated constantly with new things?
Well, this comes back to the whole start doing, stop doing thing, right?
Right.
So if as long as you keep your life open to that inundation, to the things that are just going to overwhelm you or distract you, well then, you know, what's the use of trying to sort of start doing these other things when you haven't sort of stopped the bleeding of everything that's sort of bombarding you.
Yeah.
So I mean, you may need to establish a habit of or it really, this is kind of stopping a habit in let's say email, for instance. You know, you may just need to say 2 times a day when you check your email and do anything about it, you know, like or something like that, you know, whatever, like you said, let the system serve you, don't serve the system. But but you know, it's having you know, when we talk about structuring your day, that really has just as much to do with structure as anything, is because what we're talking about is boundaries, right? You know, I mean, you're saying, you know, basically, I'm not going to subject myself to that bombardment in a way. I mean, you may need to just start like unsubscribing from things. Like, I mean, I know that, you know, some people might be like, oh no, you know, it's I love that stuff, you know, but like, I honestly, I have just pared down so much on how much I allow sort of like regularly released content to come into my world. Or
sure,
I mean, even something like, I mean, I'm just, honestly, this is just me, and I have to sort of understand my own tendencies, right? So for me, I know that social media, you know, just like the news feed on Facebook or whatever, you know, that just the whole news feed idea is just something that kills me, because I'm so undisciplined about things like that, right? So I just have to choose to it's a long time ago now that I implemented this habit of literally every time I go to Facebook, I go to my own page where I already know what's on there. There's nothing new that I didn't already know about, you know, usually, and I just look at my notifications, you know, directly, rather than going to the news feed, because I know what my pitfalls are, right?
Right.
And so I have that in place to where I don't put in Facebook.com. I put in Facebook.com/Nato Jacobson. I bypass the news feed so that I don't even give myself the opportunity to go down that just, you know, the addictive scrolling that they've so perfectly designed. So you know, I mean, it's stuff like that, right? And so when it comes to structuring your day, you know, it's easy to get sort of wrapped around this. Okay, how do I decide what I'm going to do today? I think it's really less about that. I think it's more about, how do I decide what I'm not going to do today?
Wow. Yeah.
It's a process of elimination.
Mm-hmm.
And prioritization is just as much about what you're not selecting or not prioritizing as it is about what you are. Because that's so much of the kind of the discipline of decision making,
Yep.
is learning how to filter out all the noise, right? So then that kind of addresses that side of it. And then when it comes to actually deciding what you're going to do, well, okay, if you, you're going to have certain responsibilities, certain obligations that you need to meet. This is where we, of course, then venture into the territory of overcommitment, and we need to be really careful about what obligations or that we choose to commit ourselves to, and that really comes down to understanding your own capacity, understanding allocation and of your own resources, right? There are three currencies in your life that you need to use. One is money, the other is time, and the third is energy. And so if you use the paradigm of those three currencies to understand and assess your own capacity and what you choose to commit to, then that's a bit, digging into that's probably beyond the scope of this discussion, but
right.
but that's the kind of thing that's like really, really critical stuff to understand. And then beyond what you commit yourself to in obligation to other people, then are the actual goals that you're setting for yourself that are self-imposed, right? So then if you're going to prioritize those, if you're going to make those things actually important, right, then that's where you kind of have to figure out, okay, what can I do in a day that just moves me in that direction? What is it that just gives me progress toward that goal, or a pace, like we talked about earlier, what paces me toward accomplishing that on time, or that kind of thing. And there's a certain degree of flexibility that has to be allowed in this, right? That you have to be adaptable to the changing landscape, and understanding that you can only know so much or have so much context today about what that pacing should look like. But that's where focus becomes extremely important, to where these goals that are outside of your comfort zone, that are self-imposed, that are not technically obligations, right? These things that you're choosing to do on your own, in a sense, you have to be highly selective about them, make them very, very few in number and very focused, because otherwise you're going to get, like, distraction just inevitably comes into play when you're not already highly narrow in your focus, right? So, and I would even recommend this in the way that you structure your day. I want to actually do this more myself. I feel like I haven't even fully experienced or realized the potential of this, but I've done it some. I would highly recommend using a sprints and breaks model with a lot of what you do. Obviously, if you're like just totally in the zone on something creative and you don't need it, well then don't worry about it. But for those things, especially that are harder for you to stay focused on doing, I highly recommend taking say 50 minutes or as an example, and then 10 minutes break. 50 minutes, 10-minute break. 50, just set, or if you need a little bit more time or less, or whatever makes sense for you. Using a model like that allows you to only have to commit to so much time to stay focused, and you just go for it, and then you're able to alleviate the pressure for a little bit, to
Yeah.
and you're getting yourself into a rhythm, and you might I do this actually with Grant Cadwell, a Motion U
Yeah.
guy. We each Thursday we're actually doing it today.
That's great.
He and I keep each other accountable on what our sprints are supposed to be, right? So for my sprint right now, I'm doing this call, and
Right.
and
You
Grant's
seem
off,
fairly
doing
focused.
something
I mean,
else, but
yeah.
yeah, hopefully. Yeah. So anyway, that I would also just recommend, like, if you have a friend who where you can implement accountability with this, that can also be super, super helpful.
No, that's absolutely fantastic, and I feel like we're in so many ways we're just scratching the surface of so much that we could talk about on this subject. But as we wrap things up, if people want to get in touch with you and want to talk more on these subjects, or those kind of things, or want to hire a very capable actor, both in voice and visual, is that how you say that? I don't even know. But anyways, how do people get in touch with you? What's the best way?
Yeah. So feel free to reach out to my assistant Courtney at natojacobson.com, and if you want to schedule a call with me or anything about this stuff, she'll get you taken care of. I love coaching people, consulting for them on various things. I both do, like, the creative side of consulting. I'm a writer and director and stuff. I do the creative side as well as sort of the life side, the career stuff, and the kind of stuff that we talked about today. I think investing in your own personal growth, or investing in yourself is about the best investment you can make. So
absolutely.
So taking some time to reach out and work on these areas is something that I'm just extremely passionate about helping people with. So please don't hesitate to reach out. Courtney at natojacobson.com.
Perfect.
Would love to talk with you.
Awesome. All right. So thanks everybody for joining. Really quick, before we let people go, what's we like to do our speed rounds, which is like a resource or a book recommendation for people to kind of take away it maybe as a next step for them.
Yeah. Oh boy. So many. I would, oh man, I would say, Minute with Maxwell is a great subscription to a daily, like 2-minute video.
Okay.
That really is great, like on a bigger picture level. More practical resource. Oh man, sorry, I'm just like sifting through a lot of things in my head right now. I would say looking into something like Michael Hyatt's Full Focus Planner, or something that, if you don't have the money for that, then you can look into other things that are similar. I would recommend maybe doing some homework on a system like that you can use for day-to-day implementation. I would be happy also to bring people in on my tool, the Life Organizer, that I use for people. I use for my own life. The scorecard is a great tool. On it, I actually pulled it from a different book, but that was more organizationally focused book. A more individually focused book that also talks about a scorecard and other types of tools like that is The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. So I would highly recommend that book, which talks a lot about the momentum idea and that we were touching on earlier. Really great resource that kind of bridges the big picture with the practical very well.
Perfect. Awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much. Well, again, thanks everybody, and thanks Nato for coming on. If you haven't already, we would love to have you guys subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have a bunch more stuff coming up like this. And who knows, maybe we'll have Nato on again sometime in the future. We can kind of dive into some more of these subjects. But again, the contact for Nato was, if you want to talk to his assistant, Courtney at natojacobson.com, if I got that correct. And yeah, so he would love to chat with you guys further. And if you guys leave questions in the comments, we can also follow up more in our Facebook group, which is free to join. It's the Film Career Community. So if you go to facebook.com and type in Film Career Community, we'd love to have more conversations there as well. But yeah, thanks everybody for joining, and Nato for coming on, sharing with us your time and availability. We appreciate that. And with that, we're going to let people go for today. So God bless, and talk to you all soon. So all right, we're going to go ahead and head to our outro. Did I say intro? Outro. It's got to be outro.